Thank you to the United States and President Trump for acting when others would not. Thank you for standing firm when others looked away. Thank you for protecting the free world with strength and moral clarity. The Council will soon meet. I have no doubt that some will denounce the United States. Some will continue to condemn Israel. But where were they when Iran raced toward the bomb? Where were they when it built underground fortresses to house weapons of mass destruction? Where were they when Iran used diplomacy as camouflage while it prepared for our extermination? They were silent. They were complicit. They were afraid. Last night, the United States acted with incredible bravery and morality. Now, the rest of the world must show its gratitude. Iran's reach extends far beyond our borders. It arms militias in Iraq, it commands terror in Lebanon, it funds Houthis in Yemen, it plots murder in Europe, and it threatens every capital in the West with its growing arsenal of ballistic missiles. You cannot sit this one out. You cannot condemn the firefighters while the arsonist tries to light more fires. You cannot protect peace by appeasing evil. To the Iranian regime, understand this: any further attacks against our civilians will be met with overpowering righteous force. Unlike your actions against our civilians, our strikes will continue to target military and nuclear facilities. We will defend our people. We will not hesitate. We will do everything necessary to secure our future.
From the Israeli representative there, the idea that regime change is up to the Iranian people. The United States has made clear that their goal with these airstrikes was not regime change, that this was essentially intentionally limited, or in colloquial terms, kind of a one and done, at least for now, depending on if and how the Iranians respond. You also heard them talk about close communication with the United States before, during, and after the strikes as well, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, you just heard from Danon. He's the U.S. ambassador, or excuse me, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, a very senior and influential member of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party. He serves in parliament quite often. And you just heard a pretty faithful echo of what we heard from Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister himself. Fulsome praise for the U.S. president for this decision that they all are describing as courageous and historic, for weighing in on behalf of Israel in Iran. But as you mentioned, Hallie, we also got another glimpse of the way in which the Israelis are now talking out of both sides of their mouths when it comes to this critical, pivotal question of regime change. And that's going to be one that, again, we've heard this from Marco Rubio. We heard this from Pete Hegseth. We know that this is not one of the goals of America's intervention in Iran. They don't necessarily want to see regime change. They're trying to cripple Iran's nuclear program. That's what we heard from the Israelis starting last Friday. And over the past 10 days, we've heard a bit of that phrase we know very well as Americans who have been following the news for the past 20 or 30 years. We're seeing a bit, at least on the Israeli side, of mission creep. As the successes has racked up militarily in Iran, the enormous level of air control over Iranian airspace, particularly over the capital, Tehran, it looks as though Israel's list of goals has expanded. Regime change has been something that is continually mentioned by Israeli officialdom, and not necessarily something that they describe with any level of detail. So the question for Washington, the question for President Donald Trump and military leaders in the States is whether or not they're getting tethered to Israel's goal of dismantling Iran's nuclear program, or whether the mission creep that we're already starting to see in Israeli rhetoric is going to spill over into Washington, and that Washington will have now tied themselves to an Israeli mission to try to replace the Ayatollahs and the mullahs who have been running Iran ever since that 1979 revolution with an agenda that isn't necessarily specific. I've asked Israeli officials, as they're talking about this regime change possibility, do they have partners on the ground? Do they know that if there's somebody who could take up the mantle of political leadership in Iran and do it in a way that would be that would jive with Israel's goals? It's one thing to clear the way for regime change. It's another thing to see it actually happen and to see it improve the circumstances that Israel feels desperately need to be improved when it comes to internal, domestic Iranian politics. We've been hearing so much about Israel striking nuclear facilities, ballistic missile sites, but they've also been hitting things like economic pipeline for Iran, the oil fields, the gas fields. They've been hitting state propaganda arms like state television installations. They've also been hitting the domestic internal security mechanisms, basically the secret police of Iran. They've taken hits by the Israelis. So it looks as though when it comes to the target list, that's also started to focus a little bit away from just the nuclear capabilities and the ability of the Iranians to fight back against Israel, and starting to really focus on things that are looking more like they're aiming at regime change. And whether you call this hubris or whether you call this smart money, I don't know, because the fact is that as you heard from Danon just right now, the Israelis consider this something that the Iranians have to finish. They don't necessarily have a plan for regime change. They're hoping someone in Iran will step up and do it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.